Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Olka Vaishampayan. I'm from University of Michigan in the US, and joining me is Dr. Tian Zhang. She is, so together we have co-organized today's program, this Women in RCC session, and welcome to that. It is our pleasure to arrange this session and have this, and it has been a very eye-opening learning experience over the few times that we have been able to do this. I would like to thank our sponsors, ASI, for helping us organize this session today. We are honored to have all of you join this important conversation, and today's conversation is going to be centered around the advancement and empowerment of women in kidney cancer care and research. We would like to begin this by extending our sincere thanks to all of you and to our speakers and panelists. As part of the Kidney Cancer Association, Women in RCC is a program that's dedicated to empowering and elevating female physicians in kidney cancer to lead and succeed. We do this through multiple different types of things, including mentorship. We do specialized training, leadership training for young faculty. We have some open forums that gives young faculty a chance to speak, present their work, get research mentorship also. And ultimately, the biggest thing is the camaraderie that builds through this lasting professional and personal support systems. Today, we are incredibly fortunate to be joined by Dr. Cora Sternberg, our keynote speaker. She's a true pioneer in the field of GU malignancies, and we are thrilled to have her, especially for the European IKCS, because she has experience across the continent in both Europe as well as in the US. So that is very unique to her career. She's the clinical director of the Englander Institute for Precision Medicine and a full professor of medicine in hematology-oncology at Weill Cornell Medicine and New York Presbyterian in New York City. She earned both her undergrad and medical degrees from University of Pennsylvania, and she followed it by a fellowship and subsequent appointment at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. After that, for about 16 years, she led the Department of Medical Oncology at the San Camillo Fortinini Hospital in Rome, Italy. She's a globally recognized leader in medical oncology, and Dr. Sternberg has made multiple landmark contributions in urologic cancers and novel drug development, particularly in prostate, bladder, and kidney cancer. She was actually telling me about her history that she has been an organizer, one of the organizers of this conference previously. Through her extensive research publications and leadership in clinical trials, she has helped set the foundation and shape modern oncology practice. In addition, she is a sterling role model for all of us, I think, definitely for me. I have been in awe of what she's been able to achieve even in Europe as well as in the US. So today's speaker, Dr. Cora Sternberg.
Thank you for that very, very kind invitation. And for me, it really is a thrill to be here, because after Bernard Escudier and Martin Gore passed the baton, they passed it on to Manuela Schmidlinger and me. Probably there were others too, I'm not sure who exactly, but for about 4 years we did run this meeting in various cities around Europe. So for me, it's just a thrill to be back here and to be with all of you and to see how this meeting has grown and grown and become even better. So I'm really, really pleased to be here. So I'm going to speak about a few different topics, share some insights from my personal oncology journey, talk about Europe compared to America, explore gender equity leadership and mentorship, and some practical negotiation strategies for women in medicine. You've heard already about my path in oncology from the University of Pennsylvania to Stanford, to Memorial, to Italy, and back again to Weill Cornell. The funny thing is that I asked ChatGPT to make a map of this journey, and I was furious and spent 3 nights fighting with ChatGPT. Look where they put New York, and look where they put Rome. And I kept saying, you are hallucinating. What is wrong with you? And ChatGPT was apologizing and apologizing to me. I said, I can't believe I'm spending my nights fighting with the computer. And then I started looking. I said, you know, maybe I did bring some of New York with me to Italy and brought some of Italy back with me to New York, so maybe it's not so crazy. I thought it was a pretty funny slide anyway. I can't believe so. Don't completely trust ChatGPT. I think I decided to become a medical oncologist when I was doing part of my internal medicine at Stanford University. I'd never really had a mentor, and there I met Dr. Sandra Horning, who was a really wonderful mentor, still a friend of mine, and decided to go into medical oncology. At the time, ASCO had maximum 5,000 people. Nobody wanted to go into medical oncology. Women could not go into cardiology or surgery. There just wasn't even a possibility. And I said, why not do something where I can help people who are sick for no reason of their own? And she was the first one who sort of gave me the idea to do this. At Sloan Kettering, my, I guess, true mentor was Dr. Alan Yagoda. He was brilliant. He had many, many ideas. You had to sort of pick out which were the brilliant ones and which were the crazy ones, but he was really super guy. And because of that, we developed the MVAC chemotherapy regimen, which started me on my path in GU oncology, presenting this. The first time I presented this at the AUA, I think I wanted to be outrageous, so I put on a pink dress, and there were only men in the audience, only men in the audience. But that was the first presentation of MVAC. So why GU oncology? A lot had to do with my mentor, Alan Yagoda, where you happen. He was the chief of the department, and we started working with the MVAC chemotherapy regimen. But the complexity and urgency of kidney cancer, bladder cancer, and prostate cancer all demanded innovation and leadership. Back then, we really didn't have much for any of those tumors. And I thought there was a space where discovery and new therapies were needed. And I was quite happy to be in that space. And this was my very first meeting in Erice in Italy, where I went to speak on the MVAC chemotherapy regimen. And you can see I was a bit younger then. I walked in and everybody thought I would be like a 70-year-old man, because to have a first author in Italy on a paper or MVAC, you know, how could she be 30-something years old? They didn't understand. And I'm sitting here in the canteen in Erice. And it was actually for me a life-changing event to be at that first meeting in Erice, where I was studying everyone's papers, sitting in my room, not talking to anyone, but just I wanted to know who everyone was, what they published. It was my first really important European meeting. And there I met my husband. I ignored him the whole time. I didn't go to the meeting to meet a husband. That was the last thing in my brain, was to fall in love with an Italian urologist, and I sort of ignored him. And the very last night he said, would you at least dance with me once? And I said, okay. And the two of us started dancing, and like everybody in the room stopped. It was like Cinderella at the ball, and we fell in love. And we're married now 37 years, so I mean, something happened. And I can tell you that he's a urologic surgeon. He's my husband, he's my colleague, and my lifetime mentor, honestly. He's always taught me that the glass is half full and not half empty. He's got a very positive view on life. And after meeting him, I was in such a good mood. I went on to speak in London at the Marsden, and an English guy said, they didn't believe in chemotherapy at the time. They were MVAC. They said, would you give this to your mom? And I said, you don't know my mom. She never listens to anything I say. So this serious guy fell off his chair, and then everybody in the room started falling off their chairs, seeing how this guy was laughing and falling. So it was a pretty funny experience at the time. It was life-changing for me, as I say. And he was a life-changing man. I mean, with him, we crossed the Atlantic Ocean. I did things that no New York girl would have ever thought of doing, and in big waves, and it was pretty pretty interesting. We've had an interesting life. I can't complain. He's been a trailblazer in Italian urology, and you can see him with a former pope visiting his urology department. And since everyone's been talking about the pope lately, I don't have any pictures with the most recent pope. So my life in Italy was not exactly easy, since Italians are not accepted immediately in America. I had to take 19 exams in Italian in order to be considered. It held me back for years, and to be kind, I'll say it was Italian bureaucracy. But the truth is, it really was difficult for an American woman in a foreign country who had a half a brain to make it. People were really hard on me, and they didn't want me to succeed, and they didn't want me to become chief of anything. And finally, after years and years, I was able to participate in a public concorso because a woman got into an important, she says, they keep ripping your papers away and taking them away and taking them away. You can participate in this. You've been here for years. You passed all the exams. So the first public concorso I was actually able to participate in, I won the job as being chief of oncology in San Camillo Forlanini. And Kathy Redbid, Alberto Costa's wife, put me on the first issue of Cancer World, and had a writer from England come and follow me around and talk about how I was changing the department and trying to make it into a mini Sloan Kettering, because there was no research whatsoever. And it was a huge hospital, but they weren't doing any cancer research. So what I did was I hired people from the ERTC, I hired people from Spain, from 12 October. I hired really good data managers. They promised they would pay for them. They didn't. I gave them my salary for months, and then finally I said, what am I going to do? And this is San Camillo Hospital. I was chief there for 16 years. The department was a very large hospital. I had to make the records electronic because I would ask who was a patient, and they would bring me papers and papers and papers. But we were able to develop a research and a clinical trial office. And the way I was able to do it was not only patient care was number one, but I had to start a foundation. I just started it quickly in my parents' name because I figured they gave me my education. So I started it in their name, and I was able to raise money. At the time, maybe it was easier to raise money than it is now, from banks, from pharma, from everyone. And at the time, I was paying for 5 doctors, for the data managers, for everyone. And we set up a small research community in which we were able to do studies. And there, doing studies, we led and participated in major GU clinical trials in kidney, bladder, and prostate cancers. I think all of you know about the pazopanib trial that we led there. And I was able to speak at ODAC and get that approved. And I hated being at ODAC, but it worked, actually, speaking to 4 hepatologists who didn't want to approve it, but we got that one through. And we did a lot of work at San Camillo in bladder cancer, kidney cancer, prostate cancer. I don't want to put up all the papers, but we really did a lot of work through that hospital that really was not set up as a research hospital. And I can tell you that my very first ERTC meeting was in Holland, and I said maybe after 10 years they might let me run a protocol or do something. But I don't know if many of you probably do remember Peter de Mulder. He was one of the organizers here, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man from Nijmegen who eventually succumbed to kidney cancer too. And he said, we need new blood here the very first day, and you need to take over bladder cancer research. So I invited him to my house in Rome, and together we developed the high dose, which is now called the dose dense or high dose MVAC chemotherapy regimen. And that organization was really wonderful for me because I was really not so well accepted in Italy just because I was an American woman. And with the RCC, I eventually became an elected member, a treasurer, and then an executive board member as well. When I look at oncology research in Europe, what I can say is that it's publicly funded through national systems and EU programs. It's collaborative, it's academically oriented, and outcome-focused trials. It's often easier to enroll in industry-driven trials because it takes time for drugs to be approved, as opposed to America, the minute a drug is approved, it's on the market the next day. There's growing precision medicine, but I think there's a cost-conscious adoption, which they never managed to think about in the US. There's an emphasis on equity and ethics in research, and there's broader access to trials because of the universal health care. So I think that after working in both systems, there are definite advantages and disadvantages to every system, but there are some serious advantages, particularly the last one, the broader access to universal health care. The research in the USA is different. At least until recently, it was funded by the NIH. We're not sure what's going to happen now, by pharma and by private foundations. It is fast-paced, it's innovation, and there's many industry-driven trials. There's a strong emphasis on precision medicine and genomics, and that's one of the reasons that I did go back to the US. It's competitive, there's productivity-focused research culture. The access to trials can be limited by systemic disparities. Not all people have access to trials. There's not universal health care, and it may even be getting worse lately. We're not even sure what's going on. And academia actually can be very slow. There's so much bureaucracy. It can take 2 years to get a trial approved, whereas in Italy it took 4 months, and I thought that that was slow. Now I don't think it's slow anymore. I think that this can be even slower. There's really a lot of bureaucracy. I want to stop for a second and talk about some of the challenges of being a woman in leadership. There's persistent inequities in leadership attainment, and this is probably not just in medicine. I think it's all across the board. In terms of getting high visibility academic appointments, more difficult for women. Speaker roles, more difficult for women. Being on editorial boards, getting tenure. If I look at in my own hospital, the number of women who have tenure, much lower than the number of men. And there's a total lack of transparency in the earnings as well. And this is something across the board. And there was just some recent article in the Wall Street Journal about this. And this is really something that hasn't changed over many, many years. I worked at the RCC with Dr. Martine Picard, a breast cancer oncologist. I think she's broken many of the barriers in the world of oncology. There are not so many like her. She managed to be both EURTC president, ESMO president. She started the Breast International Group. And she was really great for me. She nominated me to be the chair of the ECHO meeting. Of 19,000 people were there. And I also received the ESMO award because of her, because she sponsored me, let's say. She was really there for me because of the EURTC. But there aren't so many like her, unfortunately. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So mentorship means listening, advising, opening doors. A mentor is someone who provides guidance and support and advice based on their experience. And a mentor helps you develop professionally and personally, offering feedback, sharing knowledge, and kind of being a sounding board. And I think having a mentor and mentorship is so important for all of us. Sponsorship is someone different. It's a senior leader who actively advocates for you, pushes you ahead, and puts you on boards, nominates you to do things, and puts even sometimes their own reputation on the line to help your career. In terms of mentorship at Weill Cornell, I've established a mentorship committee for junior assistant professors in hematology and oncology, and we match junior faculty with senior faculty, no judgmental mentors. A hematologist will not necessarily be with a hematologist in their field, will be someone in solid tumor, for example, so that they can speak about their life problems and speak about whatever they want to speak about. I think that formal mentorship structures create accountability and long-term success. And I'm also mentoring a Swiss oncologist for the European School of Oncology. These are just some of the young women that I'm mentoring at Weill Cornell Medicine. They're all brilliant. 2 of them have PhDs already, and they're still in the assistant professor level, and I'm trying to push them to go further. I'm mentoring some international mentees and also working with the European School of Oncology. They have different needs. The one European School of Oncology is always asking me GU questions. The Americans, I'm trying to push them to become associate professors. The needs are different, but it's nice to be able to do that, I think. In terms of negotiation for women in medicine, I think women must be empowered to ask for what they deserved. A woman who does that is being assertive. They used to say we were aggressive, but I think assertive is the right word. I think you need to know your own worth. You need to be able to ask for what you need. You need to support others in doing the same. I don't think negotiation is selfish. I think it's strategic. Resources, time, and visibility are all negotiable. And women often, accept the first contract they're offered. They don't even fight about it. And they're offered less than men. And I think the women really must support each other. And that is really what I believe. This is a group that we've established at Cornell. These are all women oncologists and hematologists. We get together once in a while in someone's home and we support each other. We talk about transparency. We talk about anything we want to talk about. And I think it's a really nice thing to be able to do. And on International Day, someone else did this, that one of my colleagues, they recognized some of the women that are at my hospital. There are many more, obviously. So I did return to New York because of the precision medicine. I never had met a computational biologist when I was in Italy. I didn't know anyone. And I've really learned a lot working in the Englander Institute. I run our monthly precision medicine meeting now. We do sequencing in several different places, and then I help the fellows to prepare their presentation, and it's been a very successful meeting. I now help integrate genomics and AI into oncology as well, and we're actually setting up a center for oncology AI, or we're trying to, let's say. And this is me speaking at the New York Genome Center. And here I am with Olivier Elemento, the tall one. He's the actual head. He's a computational biologist, and he's the head of the Englander Institute for Precision Medicine. I'm the only actual medical oncologist there who's a clinical director, and also Andreas Bohner is a computational biologist. So working with these people, being with these people, understanding that things are really changing, I think is very important for us in oncology. And here we are with the new Dean Harrington, who came from Stanford on his first visit to the Englander Institute, and I'm here with Olivier Elemento showing him the Hyperion machine. And this was his very first visit at the Englander Institute for Precision Medicine with some of the key people, along with Dean Harrington there. This was not too long ago. As far as AI research in the USA, it's fast. It's being adopted in diagnostics, pathology, and precision medicine. That we do have strong industry partnerships, many in biotech, Google, Microsoft, but many, many more. There's large data sets enable rapid model development, and the FDA is supposedly evolving an AI-specific regulation. The risk of bias and equitable access remains high. And I removed my slide about AI in Europe because I realized that I didn't work in Europe when I was doing anything with AI, so I didn't think that I was the best one to talk about that. So I'll just talk about it in the USA. And with Olivier Elemento, we just published an article on AI in medicine in the New England Journal of Medicine AI, which is, I think it's a fairly new journal. So I'm pretty proud of that. That just got published. And we're establishing the Center for Oncology AI, and this is our core team. There's oncologists, there's scientists, there's computational biologists, and we're trying to do the best we can to find better ways of finding the right drugs for the right people through precision medicine and AI. Just some closing thoughts. Mentorship is legacy, passing on knowledge, skills, and experience to others. I've worked my whole life in oncology, and I've tried my best to help my patients, to do my best, but I'm not going to be the one to cure cancer. But I hope that I can help the younger generation to, maybe they'll be able to do it. I'm not going to do it. Negotiation is agency. That's the capacity to have power over your choices and what happens to you. The future of oncology depends on those whom we mentor today. So let's keep building a field that supports excellence, equity, and the next generation. I think that's what we need to do most. So this is where I was and where I am now. I did fellowship and my staff training at Memorial with my mentor, Alan Yagoda. I then raised 2 children in Rome, who now live in New York and London. They're both married now. It's an old picture. And now I'm clinical director at the Engelner Institute of Precision Medicine in New York. I do miss my friends and colleagues in Europe, and I commute back and forth with my husband, Professor Vito Panzador, to Rome. And this is a picture this June, because he's running this robotics, surgery, and laparoscopy meeting. This was the 20th edition of his meeting, and we're standing there in beautiful Rome at his meeting just this June. I don't want you to think that I went to New York and left my family, which I did not. This is my family just missing my daughter's husband, but I'm even a grandmother now too. So that luckily my son and his wife live in Brooklyn, so I do get to see them every week, which is very nice. And my husband and my daughter are there. So I want to thank you all for your attention, and thank you for this invitation. It was really wonderful for me to speak here. Should I sit down?
It was wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Sternberg. We do have a couple minutes for questions from the audience, and maybe as we're transitioning, or feel free to get to the mic or just speak up where you are. It's a small room. I think it's so forward and trailblazing what you've been able to do across continents, and your wisdom and insights about the journey and the challenges, and just being very authentic with us to face those challenges. And I think that's very brave. So how did you find that within yourself, to set that new trial office and lead, and what were those challenges like along the way?
I think the major challenges that I had along the way were when I moved to Italy. I would say that people didn't want to accept me. I remember when I first was in my husband's office, and my husband said, "This is Dr. Sternberg. She's from Memorial Sloan Kettering. She did the MVAC regimen, blah, blah, blah," with a face. And then she said, "She's also my wife." "She's your wife? Well, that's another story." I mean, there really was a kind of a gender bias, and to be accepted, I had to be his wife. And that went on for quite a while. I can't say it's changed much. And I had problems in Italy. I mean, the word is invidia, it's called jealousy, I think. And maybe it exists everywhere, but it was hard for me. It was a difficult adjustment. And I didn't want to leave Sloan Kettering. I had a great job. I loved it there, unless I was married. So I said, I'm not coming there as a girlfriend. I want to be married. But once I was there, I thought, oh my God, look what did I get myself into. It was hard.
Followed your love. Yeah.
While it was difficult, I was able to raise 2 children in that time period. So I had some time before I became chief at San Camillo. So I think, in a way, I was kind of lucky, because it's very difficult when I see now when I'm mentoring people who have young children, commuting to work, trying to do everything at the same time. It's not easy for any of us, I think.
Absolutely. I think that probably resonates with many in the audience. Yeah, Dr. Tenier.
My voice was very Cora, this was so inspiring.
Sweet.
I really had goosebumps, honestly.
Thank you.
It's just so inspiring to, follow your journey. I knew many of the things, you've done, of course, at Wikipedia, but just to frame it the way you did. The question I have is, I think we have come a long way from the days when, you didn't have a chance as a woman, and you asked, as well as Europe and the rest of the world, to be in leadership or to be recognized, to lead trials, to lead the
It's a women's meeting.
5 allies.
So, you know, I think we need to get more men here. We need to get Albanian men on stage to vouch for you, champion you, to, because I really think until half the society, the men in society, come and say, it's about equity in everything we do. Women are equal to men. In my opinion, the world would be a lot better off with women leading than men leading. Maybe we won't have all these wars and all the dictators. I don't know any dictator who's a woman. But I think we need to get the men on board, and maybe that would be, I think, the beginning of the end of this cycle. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on this. If you see something on the horizon that can accelerate this bridging the gap and bring us.
Things have changed a lot. When I first went to medical school, it was the first year that there were 25% women in the class. The year before, there were 4 women in my University of Pennsylvania in the class. So, and it was really difficult. You couldn't be a cardiologist, you couldn't be a surgeon, even the nurses on the floor didn't want us there. I mean, things have changed enormously, and women are appreciated, and there are women that are heads of departments and heads of surgery. Not as many as men, for sure. There's still this gender and lack of transparency in what we're being paid. And my solution right now is that the women have to support each other, and we have to have men like you who are open-minded to support us as well. And I think that, just the reason, there are many women in medicine now, many more than there used to be, but this meeting was called Women in whatever, so maybe if it had a different name, there would be a few more men in the room, but I think that there are a lot of women in medicine now, and they're rising up, and we have to help each other. I think I always like to support women. If you notice, all my mentees are women, because if I have a choice, I'd rather support a woman, because I think they need more help. I don't know. I think we all need to help each other, though. I don't know if I can answer your question easily.
That's great. And we all can use as much support, right? So the hashtag he for she and she for she, all the support. Great. Well, we are about halfway through. I would like to introduce the rest of our panelists who have joined us on stage. And thank you, Dr. Sternberg, again. Dr. Lisa Pickering is to my left. She's Associate Medical Director for Strategy at the Royal Marsden. And then Dr. Laurence Abichez is at the end. Chief of Medical Oncology at Gustave Roussy in Paris. And we wanted to pivot a little bit to have a conversation and negotiation, and who better than the Associate Medical Director for Strategy and the Chief of Medical Oncology in Paris. So it's really, we would love to have an interactive conversation, and we have some prepared questions, but certainly be happy to take questions from the audience as well, so don't be shy. And so, Olga, you want to start us off with our questions?
Yeah, so I was going to start with maybe the easier one. Like, have you had any example of an easy negotiation as a woman leader? Any of you?
So I have to thank you very much first, and thank you for this session. Thank you, Esai, for supporting. Nizar, to your question, I think the more we discuss it, the better people start thinking about is this well balanced? Are we providing enough opportunities? So, to some extent, each time we have a get together with the women in RCC, I think we're making progress. So, I was trying to think about easy negotiation, and 2 came to my mind. So the first one is as head of Medonc. Recently, we had a renovation in our building, and anyway, to put a long story short, I needed to be able to join 2 different parts of my Medonc department on one floor, but that required moving 2 other departments, part of the heme department, part of the clinical research department. The things that were not under my umbrella, but for my department, at least I would have 1 single site instead of 2 sites. And so the only way, I felt it was an easy negotiation for several reasons. The first one is that I was not negotiating on my behalf, but on a group behalf, okay? Don't make it personal, you're doing something because of a group, because of an entity. You have to think twice of the impact of what you're asking. So in my head, I had to build a solution for a win-win, like the others would have a better office in another place and so on. And lastly, and that's the fun part, I saw the opportunity. One day I was riding a bike, and I have an e-bike back home, and I saw the deputy chair of my hospital, who's the administrative person making the call, and he was on his bike, which is not an e-bike. And so I went next to him, and it was a little hill like that, and I started explaining. And I was on my e-bike, so I was fine. And he was like, okay. And at the end of the ride, it was settled, okay? So sometimes you have to seize opportunities. No, but the bottom line was about making sure that everyone would be happy and that the other component would see that as an opportunity for themselves. And the other negotiation I found was about authorship. So this is something that, of course, is not an easy part. And here again, we don't, as women, or I guess as some men, you don't want to negotiate for yourself, okay? And so what I wanted to negotiate an authorship that seems very reasonable to me. I had to prepare that. That's the bottom line. You have to prepare that. And you have also to stand every possible reason that are obvious to you, that sometimes you don't even stand, but you have to explain them a lot about the history, how you were involved in the trial design and so on, how much patients you may have enrolled. And for me, there is a lot about, I want to represent Europe, okay? We spoke about trials that are company-sponsored trials, and there are some imbalance because many of these pharma are based in the US. And for me, it's very important to give the opportunity for Europe to be visible. And so I built that negotiation on the fact that for me it was giving also the visibility that Europe deserved in this trial. So these are two examples that went smoothly. I have more examples of things that did not went smoothly, okay? Because it was hard to find those two.
Yeah, those are coming.
Yeah. I have one. I don't even know if this is a negotiation. And when I looked at this, I said this was the hardest question of all. When were you faced with an easy negotiation as a woman? And I don't think I ever was. Nothing was ever easy. But when I first came to Weill Cornell, at my very first faculty meeting, there was a woman who was the head of breast cancer research, and she was presenting the breast cancer research program. And a man who was the head of solid tumor interrupted her in the middle. And I said, it just came naturally. I said, would you please let her finish? It wasn't for me. It wasn't just, he was so rude. And she looked at me and she finished the whole thing. And when it was over, she said, who are you? I never met you before. I never saw you. Why did you defend me? I said, because he interrupted you. It was rude. She's now become my best friend. She helped me all through COVID. She's 20 years younger than I am, but we are best friends ever since that one little thing that I helped her out because he was shutting her up for no reason. It's not exactly a negotiation,
no, that's
but that's what happened.
Example, though, how we can lift each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can come in with one, or are we moving on to the next question?
No, please.
So I was going to say, actually, just a quick point to Nizar's excellent question. I've asked myself whether, because I'm quite fortunate in my job. I've been given many opportunities. There are not many times in my daily work that I'm conscious of being a woman. So I think I've maybe had it easier than some. You will see I get to stand on podia. I have some respect. And so I say to myself how important, I feel I know it's important. I know it's important when I talk to the younger faculty who maybe things haven't been so easy. A small thing that happened recently though, and this is to Cora's point about speaking out about injustices and unconscious bias when you come across it. Really small example, all of our hospitals will have panels for when things go wrong, investigation panels. And there'll be an investigation and it's presented back for learning. And there were 6 cases being presented back at this recent panel a few months ago, not long. And they were being presented. There were 2 women, myself and the director of medicine, clinical divisional director, and 4 being presented by men. And that's not the point, the 2-4. The point is, on the agenda, All the men were written Dr. this, Professor that, and then my one, Lisa, her one, Emma. And this agenda has been approved by senior people in our hospital, and you think, and it's a small point, I don't care, and anyone can call me Lisa, that's not the point, but the disparity, and it's important to call that out, I think. So, even small things like that happen regularly, unfortunately, but what we can do is speak out about it, and actually point out to people that this wasn't malicious, it was an accident, but it is unconscious bias, and it shouldn't be allowed to happen, in my view.
It happens all the time, though.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that was just in part answer to your question. An easy negotiation I had. I changed my job somewhat 6 years ago. I moved from working across 2 hospitals to just 1, and so I had to discuss my contract. And actually, I just made sure I knew the terms of the contract. I knew what was reasonable and fair. I knew what was within the rules and regulations of the hospital. I was really well prepared going into that discussion. I knew that what I was asking for was reasonable, and I made sure I knew and had thought about what was easy for them to agree with me. I put myself in their shoes. What do they need to hear to say yes to what I am asking? It wasn't about salary, it was about sessions and work and how my working week was going to happen. And I knew that so I knew I was well prepared, I knew what I was asking for was compliant and reasonable, if a little atypical, and therefore it was going, and it worked with my team. No, the patients were not disadvantaged, the team was not disadvantaged. And really what I was asking for, I'll be being absolutely transparent, was to have some Wednesday afternoons off. And so it's not a big ask, but routinely not being there some of the time on a full-time contract. And so it's not a very big ask, but I just made sure I knew that it was compliant, reasonable, worked with the team, and I made it easy for them to agree with me. And so that actually was quite an easy discussion.
You were prepared.
Because I was really well prepared. What I was asking was fair, reasonable, and worked with the team.
That sounds like a lot of lessons of being prepared, finding some win-win situations, and that ease of negotiation comes when you are well prepared and advocating for other people. So we're going to flip this question around a little bit. Help us understand a challenging negotiation situation, and what was challenging about it, and how did you overcome it?
Me?
Go ahead.
Well, I had difficulty, as I mentioned, in finally being able to be considered for what they call a public concorso in Italy. And there were some people, let's say, who didn't want me to become a chief of oncology. So the first time that they banded the public concorso, they unbanded it, and they kind of threatened some of the people. So then they had it again with other people who were less threatened. But they were told that they were supposed to kill me, all right? They were honestly horrible to me. So at one point, they first asked me, where do you throw away all the garbage for a lung cancer patient? Really silly questions. But then they said to me, your problem is that you are an expert in bladder cancer. And at that point, I lost it. I said, I don't understand. All of these other people are very qualified, but they're not an expert in anything. So why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? And so there was a woman across the table who was the medical director, and I could see her start to smile when she heard me, because I just couldn't believe that was my problem. And afterwards, I won that concorso at San Camillo, and I spoke to her, and I said, I think I'm going to need your help. And she said, sure, I'll meet you whenever you want. I said, how about every single week? And I met her every single week for at least the first year, and she did help me with a lot of it, negotiating different things, and she really did help me. But that little smile on her face showed me that it was okay. They were out to kill me, and they didn't.
My gosh.
I'll give a contrasting example for a contract negotiation, and this time it wasn't mine, so this is on behalf of a group. So not in my current hospital, in a previous hospital where I was in a different leadership role. So this was a general hospital with an emergency department and lots of different specialties, so like many of the hospitals you will work in. And I ran one section of the department of the hospital, which included the emergency department, all of acute medicine, and there was a different section of the hospital that had all the surgery happened in, a different division. And like many hospitals, there were waiting lists for surgery, there were long waiting times in A&E. So consultants would be offered additional money to do additional sessions. And things that involve procedures, in the UK, the way the health service is funded, the things that involve procedures are more likely to make money than things like running an emergency department, which is just very chaotic and loses money. And so the surgeons and the anaesthetists, their hourly rate for doing additional work was higher than the people working in the emergency department, because there was more interest from the hierarchy in making the money. So I felt this was extremely unjust, and all the consultants in my division were very upset by it, but felt they had no voice to make a difference. And I had to try to ask for the trust to correct this, or in my view, correct this, and there's the finance director, and so I sat on the hospital where executive decisions were made, and this was very unpopular. Nobody really wanted to do what I wanted to happen, and because what I was asking for was going to cost some money, and I spent some time, and so I looked at the team, who are my allies here, who I think will back me when I keep raising this, who can I get on side, what are the arguments behind this, and of course it was long story short again, but I felt it was sending a very poor message that the safety parts of emergency care were being less valued than the bits that made money. And we had a lengthy discussion about this. It took some time. But in the end, and again, I tried not to, I was very angry, but I tried not to be very angry. And although one thing Martin Gore said to me one time is, it's good to surprise people sometimes. If you're normally the measured person, a little bit of anger every now and again is not a bad thing. Let them see the passion. So anyway, it was very lengthy, but I picked off allies one by one. We had the message that actually it's the safety of you and your family when they come into the emergency department, that carries value. And actually it's not, and people felt that I was right, it just was financially difficult. Anyway, in the end it happened, but it was extraordinarily complicated and lengthy and onerous. But I felt really important I felt it was unjust, and so in the end we were able to pay all of the consultants the same, which I felt was the right thing to happen.
Very good. So it was about 2 years ago, actually. As part of the Medong department, we have a large infusion room where we treat about 200 patients a day. And recently, about 4 years ago, the hospital said, okay, we can be better in our process. And so for that, they hired not a consultant, but an engineer to speed up the process in the hospital. And so this engineer, smart mind, comes, give different opinion and say, oh, we have to change the flow you're organizing, your seating plans in your infusion room so that we can treat more patients. And so about 3 years ago, we started that process, optimizing the patient flow in the infusion room. And so we did optimize, so meaning more patients so that we could get to the numbers I said. But that actually put the nurse and the staff under a lot of pressure because you basically increase the ratio of patients they would treat per day because it is running a bit more smoothly. And what happened is that 2 years ago, I remember because it was my first EORTC meeting in person, I am at EORTC, and then I received a text saying, we have a strike. And all of a sudden, all the nurses were on strike, and we had 200 patients planned that day. And so I was not in the hospital. The local doctors had to say, you have to go home because we can't treat you, we don't have the nurses. And that was a major crisis. And so I still have goosebumps mentioning it because it was so hard. So ultimately, it was it was very hard, but what I learned from this time was, first, I needed to protect my people, meaning the doctors that were facing the patient saying, I can't treat you because we don't have the staff. Second, we had to redeploy, and of course that required some medical involvement, although there were the hierarchy of the nurses that helped. But it also gave me, and after we had many work sessions to smooth out everything, but never take for granted any transformation, any new process, okay? You have to walk along the process and make sure that people are okay with new organization. And so make sure that you are never being in a position where we impose transition that you don't fully endorse or that you fully accompany yourself. And so now, of course, there has been different processes and we've smoothed everything, but I'm heavily involved in any changes, and I make sure that it is actually a medical leadership that is endorsing the changes. That's one of the things I can take as a take-home from this one.
Did they not hire more nurses when they did this?
No.
They needed something.
Everyone, we have a shortage of staff.
Like everyone.
Yeah, one of the concerns that I have about negotiations is so many times as women, we shy away from it. So we typically don't even rate ourselves to the point that I am deserving of this position, I should go after it. And you know, we are our worst critics, we all know that. And there's always something on the personal side. There are expectations from kids, from, you know, family, whatever circle within your periphery that is encroaching on your goals. So that, I think, is an important point, that it is worth going ahead and fighting for it, whatever goal you're looking at, and don't shy away because you've lost before you even started. I think one of the other questions we had is, again, what would be your ultimate advice? I think we would like to hear parting comments from all of you about what kind of advice, what should young faculty be thinking about, and how should they be navigating this so-called tough world for them? Lawrence, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I hope I got your question clear. My advices would be, listen, okay? This is the very first step, is to understand what is at stake for the person in front of you or for the different stakeholders. It may not be towards you, it may be towards other people. And so you need to make as clear as possible the situation so that you understand what are the people needs. And sometimes just by listening, you actually add knowledge. And so this is something that you need to practice. You do it for your patients, do it in your relationship, in the connection with people, so that it's helpful. And sometimes you have to involve third parties. And then you need time to process and to prepare. That will be my key lesson will be just prepare. You expect everything comes like this. No, sometimes you have to practice, to train. It's like giving a talk, you need rehearsal and so on. And so just a sheet of paper, sometimes you have formatted guide discussion that can help you in tricky situation. And these are the things I would list.
Okay, yeah, valuable. Lisa?
So I thought about this, and two of the things I wrote down were be well prepared so that you know what you're going to say, very similar point. Listen to their point or try to imagine, so again, listen. So I also wrote down listen. And try to put yourself in their shoes in advance. Why is this going to be difficult? And think, what do you think they need to hear to come round to agreeing or part agreeing with what it is you're going to ask for? I also said, when in person, if you know something is going to be difficult, try to do it in person. I'm sure we've all had misunderstandings by communicating, by email, etc., where actually you know if you'd had that conversation out loud, it would have gone better. So if you anticipate something being difficult, arrange an actual verbal discussion. Think about when you're talking to patients and you have some difficult news to communicate, and we will all have strategies for that. So if I'm going to have a difficult discussion, you meet the person, you try to, bond, have some common ground, talk about something briefly that's nice, first, if that's appropriate, and then say we have a slightly difficult discussion to be had, so that you're all prepared. And when you're doing that, and when you're saying something that you know is going to be unwelcome, or that someone doesn't want to hear, don't attack. Because any of us, if we feel attack, the natural reaction is you attack back. You either become very defensive or you attack back. You don't, and you have to think, what is my goal? What is my goal? What is the best way of achieving the goal? And I have to sometimes fight my natural instincts if I am going to be wound up or a little bit emotional, whether that's angry emotional or even upset emotional, if things are really difficult. So I think you introduce the concept that this is maybe a difficult discussion, and I sometimes find even doing that is helpful, just acknowledging that, and then trying to do so as calmly as possible. And I say, just think about what makes it easy for them to at least partly agree with you. Think what you're prepared to, we've heard about this a lot recently, haven't we? A negotiation. Dare I say the word tariff, but give something up. Where can you consider, what can you give up? People like to feel they have a win. Yeah. And if you can anticipate that, if you're really well prepared and you can think it through, what are you prepared to give up so that person feels that there has been some compromise? And so I think those are some of the tactics I use, with varying degrees of success. I don't always listen to myself, but those are some of the things that I try.
Yeah.
I think I agree with what both of you have said. I think being prepared is essential, and being clear, being very clear to people, listening to them to try to understand their level of education, what they understand from what you've said. You may have to say things more than once, too. I really do not like saying important things on Zoom meetings. I really want people to be there in person, as you said. But I think that, with patients, we really need to be as clear as possible with their family, with them, to give them hope, but to be clear. And with negotiations with other people, I really believe that as women, we need to assert ourselves, know what we're talking about. And I don't think we're being aggressive if we say what we think, what we think. It's always women were always considered aggressive if they said anything. And I think that hopefully is changing a bit, but I'm not sure how much. But I think that that's important.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So the words that are coming to mind now as we wrap up are listen, clarity, prepare, and advocate, right? A lot of good themes here in the morning. We didn't hear a lot from the audience, but I think we had a wonderful discussion, and really appreciate all of our leaders joining us on stage. As we conclude, we do want to extend our heartfelt thanks to ASI, as also to Kidney Cancer Association for giving us this platform for the Women in RCC program. We welcome you and to invite you to explore the Women in RCC program on the KCA website, and also to join us for the upcoming summer webinar after ASCO, where we'll continue these conversations. We're hoping to have Kim Rathmel as our keynote speaker there. So all very important future opportunities to engage. And before we go to the general session across the way, we were hoping to have a group photo. So if all of you could come to the stage, we'll take a picture and then head to the general session. Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
Of course. One question. You have 2 minutes.
Sure. So have you felt a different interaction when you have a boss, let's say, that you report to who is a man versus a woman? I mean, actually you spoke about supporting each other. Definitely that's the message. Women need to support women to get to that utopic world of we're all equal, men, women. But do you see there's a difference sometimes if a woman is in charge and you are reporting to her, then which is easier, which is more, obviously supportive of you? A man, I mean, obviously, Laura, you had Alan Yagoda, Laurence, you had Bernard, Escudier, I mean, as your mentors, and
I haven't had women to report to.
She is the woman report.
That's an interesting experience.
So yeah, it's actually not gender related, it's person related,
Yes.
okay? So I have reported right now my head of clinical director of the hospital, she's a female, and there's absolutely no problem. As you say, that 2 male mentors that have been extremely supportive. I've seen discrimination in men above me who clearly were not happy that it was a female underneath. But it's about people. It's not. I don't think there is a clear signal. It's at the personal level.
Yeah.
That being said, I can tell you that as head of Medonc, I have on a regular basis junior female faculty saying that they see a difference, that they have a female director. Positive in a positive way, because they didn't think they could be there one day. So there's a lot about the projection you give.
Yeah. I mean, one of the concerns, of course, is that person, it goes all the way to the top, right? So even if you're reporting to a woman, that person still may be marginalized by the higher-ups, further higher-ups. So there are those challenges that you come across. But I think in general, just the fact that we have more women in leadership changes the perspective of the younger faculty, in my view. Right?
Very good. Great conversation. Please join us on stage for a photo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course.
Come on,
Women and
of
allies.
course.
Come.
Yeah, we value our allies.
Great job. Congratulations. I really loved your lecture. It was really wonderful. You know what? I can tell you that every meeting you would say a little hi. You actually took care about junior
Great session.
that were around.
I'm so happy to have attended, really.
Exactly. But also, are we here or are we just doing this, you know? Every time the photographer wants paying attention. That means a lot.
Great, so you did it.